everybody. My name is Monique. Greetings from Germany. I'm happy to present you my study addressing the question of why drivers feel the way they do. The study was part of my PhD project, in which I always try to combine scientific research with practical relevance. For my research, the practical relevance derived from the fact that emotions influence our driving behavior in a significant way, positively and negatively. Consequently, for the automotive industry, there is the need to recognize emotions while driving and to provide drivers with features that help them to manage their emotional states. In order to recognize emotions, there are two general approaches you can think of: the direct approach and the indirect approach. With the direct approach, emotions are assumed from human expressions. For this, automatic emotion recognition technologies are used, such as facial or voice recognition. Existing research in this field is mainly technology-driven and sometimes ignores the fact that even if an emotion is recognized, you can never know if this is the feeling the person actually feels. Moreover, in a car, people often don't show emotions explicitly, so that even the best sensors and algorithms cannot detect what is not expressed. In the indirect approach, emotions are assumed from contextual factors, and this is also the approach that builds the theoretical foundation of my study. The approach is based on the assumption that experiences while driving result from the interplay of factors of the driving situation and factors of the driver. Here, object identification techniques might be a technology enabler. However, an additional ground truth is needed about which objects actually trigger emotions, and here, previous research is rare. And thus, my objective was to provide knowledge about these contextual triggers of drivers' emotions. More precise, the focus was on the temporal, spatial, and causal factors that occur in the driving situation, leading to the research questions of when, where, and why car drivers experience certain emotions. For me, as a human-centered researcher, the subjective experience of emotion, that is, that what people actually feel, is the foundation of all emotion research and the data I needed to answer the research questions. The only access to the subjective experience of emotions are self-reports. To capture self-reports, three major methods exist: free responses, emotion tags based on categories, and emotion ratings based on dimensions. Based on the previous considerations and related work, my study design met the following four characteristics in order to contribute to the state of the art. First, my study was conducted on real traffic. Second, the major data collected were self-reports of participants' subjective emotional experiences. And third, for this, a multi-method approach was used, using free responses, dimensional emotion ratings, and categorical emotion ratings. And finally, the data were collected in situ, which means while participants were driving a car. To fulfill these characteristics, a tablet application was developed that allowed participants to track their emotions while driving a car. To implement the three different methods of subjective emotion measurement, namely free responses, dimensional, and categorical emotion ratings, two versions of the application were developed. The categorical emotion rating version consisted of 4 buttons labeled as anger, fear, joy, and others. After the participants provided their rating, they received an audio signal that prompted them to describe their emotion as well as the contextual factor that triggered this emotion using their own words. In the dimensional version, participants rated their emotion using a 2-dimensional space formed by the axis bad-good and calm-excited. In addition, there was also the prompt that triggered them to describe their feelings and the triggers in their own words. Of course, the app met also important safety standards in terms of driver distraction. In the study, 34 participants completed 2 test drives in a Mercedes-Benz E-Class that was equipped with the app. In the beginning of the study, participants familiarized themselves with the car and the app while standing. Then they completed 2 test drives, each with a different version of the app, in a randomized order. They were instructed to use the app whenever someone or something elicited an emotion in them and to report the emotion as well as the contextual factor that triggered this emotion. Finally, they filled in a questionnaire to capture some personal data. Because emotions are a very sensitive experience, a very important study requirement was to create a naturalistic driving experience. Thus, only participants were recruited whose most used vehicle was similar to the test vehicle, who were experienced drivers, and who lived in the area around the test route. Since I was interested in the emotions of the participants as well as the trigger of these emotions, the free response data were analyzed. Only these included both information, the emotions and the triggers. In total, 367 free responses were given by the participants and saved as an audio recording. These recordings were transcribed and the emotional terms and triggers were extracted, resulting in 410 emotional terms and 494 emotional triggers, which were later on categorized. And additionally, they were all linked to the geolocation where the rating was given. The emotional terms were clustered into 7 categories that describe the spectrum of emotions drivers experience while driving on a higher level. In the decreasing number of frequency, these categories are satisfaction, joy, annoyance, anger, uncertainty, stress, and discomfort. An outstanding observation from this distribution is that emotions related to satisfaction and joy were most common, and at the same time, these are the 2 only categories with a positive valence. Thus, in total, 55% of the tagged emotions are positive. Regarding the question of when emotions occur, it can be seen that the morning is the most emotional time of the day. It also shows that fewer and fewer emotions can be observed throughout the day, so that the morning is the high point and the evening is the low point of the day. Now that we come to the question of where emotions occur, it makes sense to take a closer look at the test route by investigating one of the heat maps. Here, the heat maps depict the spatial distribution of joy. The route started at a research laboratory and then followed the highway. Around the middle, there was a stop at a local supermarket, and from the supermarket, the participants drove into the city, and on this way, they crossed a large intersection. The city section is the last quarter of the route. The route again ended at the lab. When investigating the joy heat map, it can be clearly seen that the emotions accumulate around the starting and the ending of the route as well as the stopover. In contrast, when investigating the anger heat map, especially intersections stand out. If we zoom in a little more closely, we can see exactly which objects cause the anger. Here, for example, is an intersection with a lot of traffic lights, which are represented by the blue points. Considering also the other heat maps, which are not included in this presentation, negative emotions are commonly experienced at intersections, while positive emotions are mainly associated with departure and arrival. Interestingly, the highway provides less potential for emotions relative to other road types. In order to interpret the text in the heat map, I also categorized the emotional triggers the participants reported in the audio recordings. Based on this data, it shows that negative emotions are mostly triggered by improper actions of other road users, traffic lights, more precisely red lights, and misleading navigation and orientation events. All of these triggers commonly occur at intersections, which explains why many emotions were tracked here. In contrast, positive emotions are mainly caused by the departure and arrival scenario, which you could also see in the heat map. Yes, what I personally remember most of my study are 2 facts. First, intersections are hotspots of negative emotions, and second, especially the beginning and the end of a drive trigger positive emotions. Because of this, I would like to give you 3 more questions on the way. First, how could we stage the departure and arrival scenario in order to improve the overall driving experience? This question is based on the idea of the primary and recency effect, assuming that especially experiences made at the beginning or at the end of an event have a significant influence on the summative evaluation of this event. Thus, I was wondering how we could make the departure and arrival scenario a positive experience so that the overall driving experience is rated better. The second and third question address the problem of emotional distraction at intersections, asking how we can support drivers with in-car features so that intersections are less emotionally distracting, and how intersections should be designed so that they cause less negative emotions. Yes, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope you have some questions, and I hope that some of you will keep in touch with me about my research. So, thank you.